Later, I'd like to introduce you to Tweet Anne, who is my co-moderator from Enterprise Ireland. Today, we're going to be looking at the catalytic role of the public sector in supporting and promoting innovation in the agri sector. So we were joined by a range of distinguished guests from the government of Ireland. So to get us started and introduce this subject, I would like to introduce Robert Schollhammer. Robert, I first started working with Robert when he was in the the European office of ADB, and I unfortunately had him running all over Europe representing ADB, asking questions and getting involved in stuff. So I'm probably responsible for some of his air miles. He's passionate about the role of Europe in Asia and how we work together and developing that relationship across Europe, especially with Ireland. An agricultural background like myself, studied in Edinburgh, and since then has spent his time roaming around the world trying to make it a better place. So Robert, can I hand over to you to introduce our discussions today?
Yeah, thank you very much, James, and also for the introduction. Just one thing I should mention was Aberdeen,
Sorry.
my agricultural, but close enough, close enough. And as James mentioned, I'm from our sectors group, which handles, among other things, the our very important work in agriculture. With them, for those of you who were able to join on Tuesday, you'll have heard the various eminent personages introducing their very own farming backgrounds, which I can't do, but at least I can offer that my Master's of Science in Agriculture, as James mentioned. I think nobody here really needs to know the importance of agriculture to Asia and the Pacific, which is home to half the world's population. One of my former jobs in ADB, I was the country director to Mongolia. And I took up the job in 2011 in the middle of this enormous mining boom in Mongolia. It was 17% growth, mining everywhere. And I asked our then president, Haruhiko Kuroda, what should we do? Where should we focus? What would be your advice? And he instantly said agriculture, because it's the best investment, because food prices will continue to rise. Let's focus there, which is what we did. And how right he was. I think this is inevitably a sector which produces this critical commodity is only going to be successful. In the region itself, Asia and the Pacific, where ADB focuses, there are great success stories. Vietnam is one, a powerhouse in rice, coffee, pepper, and cashews. But of course, the picture is very mixed across the developing Asia and the Pacific, and there's so much to do, which is why we really are very keen on these partnerships with Ireland, again, to learn, what good practices, what best practices can we take over. Just to dwell on a few statistics, a bit sobering, we have in the region about 320 million undernourished people. It's a vast number. Afghanistan, Timor-Leste, and Tajikistan have the highest rates. In South Asia, 40% of children are underweight, 31% stunted. If you look at the rates of iron and vitamin A deficiency, just enormous, off the charts. Here in the Philippines, where I'm sitting, which is the fastest growing economy in Asia and therefore the world, you have also stunting rates of about 30%. Clearly these are massive issues which need to be addressed. At the same time, we have obesity rocketing, underscoring the need for good food. China, the prevalence is close to 30%. In the Pacific, it's even higher, with countries like Nauru and Palau showing rates above 60%. So as a graduate of agriculture graduate, my favorite economist was always J.K. Galbraith, whose farming background had a very profound impact on his work. He understood the huge complexity of the sector, often bemoaning the government neglect. Compared to the prestige of economic theory, he once said, agricultural economics was considered a lower caste field of study. Galbraith believed in a strong public sector role in agriculture, given the inherent instability of the sector. There are many factors which affect other economic branches far less. How many businesses have to cope with the weather, pests, diseases, weeds, fluctuating demand, price volatility, and so on? It's a tough sector. It definitely is. Staying with Galbraith, I would quote him: "The agricultural sector provides the most enduring evidence that markets do not always bring prosperity, but sometimes, left alone, bring ruin. In all cases of successful agricultural economies, an ecosystem has been built up where farmers work with government and science, they have access to education and training, to veterinary services, and so on. It is quite the balancing act and requires a lot of resolve and political will. As a great fan of agribusiness in my 30-year career in development banks, I've had many, many odd looks when I've said I would rather support dairies than multi-billion-dollar mines. But look where the jobs are, where economic and cultural histories have been made. So this is why in ADB, in the sectors group, we zoomed in on Ireland. I have no doubt that there is a healthy debate on policy in Ireland as anywhere else, but Ireland has got a lot of things obviously right. I was lucky enough to join the visit in September to Ireland to learn firsthand the ecosystem with many of our very, very, very smart and distinguished speakers here today, educating us. But during that stay in Ireland, I was struck by one statistic. It stays very much in the head. 16 billion euros dairy exports. Whether in supermarkets in Manila or Frankfurt, the products have global reach. For a country of 5 million people, which is probably about the same as a suburb of Shanghai, it's very, very impressive. And agriculture is often neglected in favor of glitzier sectors by too many countries, I'm sorry to say. Again, Ireland, with its booming tech sector, chose a wise path, not losing sight of agriculture's importance alongside another quite different sector, I would say. My conclusion as we finished our tour of Ireland is that with the right mix of policies, technology, infrastructure, and of course the hard work of farmers, high productivity is an option, maybe even a choice. With the same magic formula, can countries here in Asia and the Pacific make the necessary strides to make food security a thing of the past? During our stay in Ireland, I asked one of our interlocutors the secret. The answer: we have a lot of rain. I'm sure it helps enormously, but we have here today some of the people who possess the great knowledge that makes the Irish system tick so well. So I think this is a real treat that we have ahead of us to hear from some of the leaders of this really world-class system. And from ADB's side, we remain very, very committed to tapping this partnership and this knowledge to bring it to developing Asia, where the need to address food insecurity is really very, very high. And I think we have a lot to learn. So that's it from me, over. And I look forward to the rest of the session. Thank you. Back to you, James.
Thank you very much, Robert, for setting the scene. We will hear today from 4 different Irish public agencies and institutions. But before we begin to hear from the speakers, I'd like to take a moment to review a housekeeping detail. All presentations will be delivered in sequence, and we will reserve the Q&A session for after all the presentations have concluded. So I'd encourage you to submit any questions that you might have via the live chat throughout all the presentations, and James and myself will then address them during the Q&A session afterwards. So without further ado, I would like now, first of all, to invite Mr. Jonathan Macmillan. Jonathan is a senior manager at Enterprise Ireland, where he currently heads the engineering and industrial product sector with a specific role to lead agri-tech strategy. Jonathan's career spans 25 years in international sales and partnering, where he successfully led teams to achieve export growth and inward investment in New York, Düsseldorf, London, and Glasgow. Jonathan, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Twee. So first of all, if your cameras are on, if you just put your hand up if you can hear me. Yeah, perfect. And yeah, if you do have a camera, put it on, guys, because it's nice to be able to see people and have some interactions. So thank you very much. This is the first time I've joined one of the ADB sessions. I joined on Tuesday and found it really interesting. So thank you to James for moderating. Thanks to Robert for his introduction. Thanks to Twee for the invite and Ice for moderating. I'm just going to share some slides and then give you a very quick overview of who Enterprise Ireland is, and more importantly, sorry, it says I can't share my slides. I'm disabled from participating, screen sharing. So
we're looking into that.
Okay, no problem. So maybe while we're doing that, let me just
please try again, Jonathan.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Ice. Screen sharing. Yep. Can everybody see that? Yep. Okay, so my name is Jonathan McMillan, as Twee said. I work for an organization called Enterprise Ireland. Enterprise Ireland has a very simple remit within the ecosystem within Ireland. Our job is to create employment. So Robert mentioned that we're a relatively small country, 5 million people, but we have, and because of that, we have to really focus and give support to our companies in Ireland in terms of helping them to grow their business internationally. So we're pretty successful in it. I don't know how many of you had the travel or had the opportunity to travel to Ireland in September, and hopefully you had a chance to meet some of my colleagues across the organization. Maybe just in the chat, actually, if you put in the chat if you've been to Ireland, and maybe what could you say if you've been to Ireland and what year you visited Ireland? We'll have a little survey. So we, in Enterprise Ireland, we work across a wide range of sectors, really everything. And I just put this slide together because it just shows in terms of us being successful, the work that we're doing within agri, food, sustainability, and the whole climate changing piece is our fastest growing sector. And that just helps set the scene for some of the slides I'm going to, and I think that the rest of the speakers this morning. Our companies in 2025 are still working in a very unsure and challenging environment. And again, I'm just trying to set the scene. So my job with my team, I have a team in Ireland, and we're working with agri-food companies, companies who are starting up, coming out of the research organizations, all focused on food, sustainability, and trying to develop new technologies to tackle some of the challenges that we have. By far, the biggest one as we talk to companies at the minute is sustainability and climate change, although it's against a whole range of different technological and other global challenges. So just to set us off, and I'm sure you'll hear this from the other speakers this morning as well, we've got a small but a very robust and globally active food and beverage sector. We have just short of 500 food and drink companies, and they span everything, as I say, from some of the world's largest dairy and meat companies, protein companies. And then we have a really healthy group of startup technology companies as well. It's a really important sector for us as a country. We've got two groups of companies in Ireland that I'm sure that you visited on your trip. We've got our multinationals. And again, I'll just leave the slide here for you to have a look at, and I'm sure you've heard this. We've been very successful in Ireland, not just in terms of attracting some of the world's largest technology companies, but on the back of that, and because of our rich heritage in food and agriculture, we've also been able to attract some of the world's largest food, dairy, and food-related technology companies. Somebody asked me yesterday, what is the secret sauce of Ireland attracting our companies and our ecosystem in Ireland? And I think one of the real key pieces, and again, you'll hear this from my colleagues who are going to speak, is our world-class food research and innovation investments. So in trade development, we talk about, I don't know whether you've heard this term, and apologies for my accent, but we've got the term called the triple helix, and that's where enterprise, companies, private sector works with government, ourselves around the table, and we also work with our research and our universities. And whenever you get those three things working really closely together, that can really lead to exciting projects and an acceleration of what we're trying to achieve. My recent job was more in the regional development side within Ireland, and we actually saw a quadruple, a 4 helix working. So there's where you have your government, agencies. It's where you have certainly your companies, your enterprises. You have your research bodies, and you include the 4th element is communities. Now that could be farmers, it could be farmers groups, it could be just the local population in the towns and the cities or the villages. And where, in my experience, you get those 4 things working together, then you have a really exciting prospect. I'm going to leave this slide because my colleagues will talk more to this. So I mentioned sustainability and food security. Those are really some of the areas that we are really focusing from an Enterprise Ireland point of view. And we're partnering with our bodies in Board BIA and in government in terms of pushing those out. I just want to talk for 30 seconds, I see my time is up, about agri-tech in Ireland. So we can talk a lot about food and beverage, but we've got a technology side in behind it, which works in partnership and is really driving that forward. These numbers are small, but what we have, I think, is most exciting, and you heard from the 4 companies on Tuesday, is that from our research and our innovation, we have some of the world's latest technologies being developed. I think they come across 4 main areas. And recently, I think the area that I see most interest in from our global partners is around the sensor control management and how software can really make a big impact in terms of sustainable farming. You saw 4 companies on Tuesday, and there's a list of our others. We're going to share our slides after this. So in summary, Ireland has we've got a long history in terms of farming and producing healthy, sustainable, secure food. We're part of 500 million people within Europe. We've got talent, we've got really good tax incentives, and we've got a good reputation. I think the key piece for us is that we're a leader within this research and development side. So finally, this is our new corporate strategy. I just want to leave you with this slide. We help companies to start. We invest in startups. We help them compete and become more productive. We certainly help them scale around the world, like you heard on Tuesday. But the key piece within Enterprise Ireland is we help both our companies, our technology providers, our whole ecosystem to connect, and that's connecting in international partnerships. So my invitation is, if you haven't already put in the chat, please tell us if you've ever been to Ireland, and also put in the chat maybe if you'd like to connect with us afterwards, and we'd be delighted to do that. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Jonathan. That was a very comprehensive introduction to Enterprise Ireland. And now I'd like to invite Mr. Paul Mayer. Paul Mayer was appointed Head of International Relations and Corporate Strategy in Jagesk in 2021, where his brief includes responsibility for a number of development projects and activities. He previously led the strategic development and modernization of the Jagesk advisory and learning programs in his role as Assistant Director of Knowledge Transfer. During his career, he has worked in Ireland and New Zealand in commercial and agri-extension roles. Paul, please.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Good morning, everybody. And again, thank you, or good afternoon, or good evening, I suppose. I thank you for the kind invitation to join this presentation today. And I think one of the things that you'll probably see is that there's lots of components of the sector in Ireland that all have their own role, but very much work together. So I think that will come across as the presentations continue. So I represent Teagasc, which Teagasc is an Irish word, but I suppose just to explain, we are responsible for the development of the agriculture and food system in Ireland. We're a part of the Ministry of Agriculture, partially funded by government. but also we earn our own money from other funding streams through clients and also through research funding, etc. So one of the, I suppose, key things is that we work under the policy umbrella of government, but at the same time we're independent. So we have our own board. We report to the Ministry of Agriculture, but we also have our own authority and board, which is represented by stakeholders from the industry. So just to give you a glance, I suppose, of how the organisation works. This is the Republic of Ireland, and we have offices and locations all across the country. So we're nationwide, about 50 different locations, and it's a mix of research centres, education colleges, and advisory and local education centres. So about 1,300 staff. There's about 130,000 farmers in Ireland. We have about 1,300 staff, and it's a mix of research, advisory, education, and others, and support staff. So approximately half of our effort goes to supporting our research activity, and the other half goes to supporting our advisory extension work or our education programs. So that might just give you a sense of the scale and what we do. So I just use this graph here, not to try and confuse everybody, but just to show that the environment in which
if I can just please interrupt you a little bit. I don't think we can see the presentation on the screen. Maybe
Okay.
if you want to try doing that again.
I'll try and share again. So
yeah.
Okay. Now, is that any
It's
better?
coming up now. Yeah. Yeah. If you want to put it in presentation
Okay.
mode. Perfect.
Presentation mode. Can you see it now in presentation mode?
Not yet, Paul.
Not yet. 1 second. I'll just go to the other slide. Okay. How's that?
Not yet, Paul.
Okay, sorry, I just stop it again. Bear with me for a second. It
No
seems
worries.
to have stuck on the screen here. So now share. Continue. Share. And now you can tell me, is it up?
Perfect, Paul. Thanks.
Okay, I was just showing this slide previously, which is just a graphic of Ireland, just to show that we're scattered across the country. And this graphic here just shows that within the Irish system, the agricultural knowledge innovation system, there's lots of components of it, and farmers and farm companies receive information from all sorts of areas and interact with all sorts of entities, whether, as the previous speaker said, whether it's the triple helix or the quadruple helix, or even a higher volume of numbers. We're part of that, and part of our role is not just to support directly to farmers, but we also support all the other parts of the sector that support farmers. So I think our role, as I say, is to work closely with others in the sector and to try and develop an Irish sustainable food system. And in particular, because we have a focus on science, our role is to bring the science to Irish agriculture and food. So that's just a brief introduction to Teagasc, and I hope that gives an insight as to how we operate and what we do. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. And just to remind everyone, please feel free to pop your questions into the chat and we'll direct it to the speakers afterwards. And up next, I'd like to welcome Ms. Lisa Phelan. Lisa Phelan is the Director of Board BIA for Southeast Asia and Australia. Herself and the team of 5 are based in Singapore and are responsible for supporting customers across Singapore, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, Vietnam, just to name a few. Lisa?
Great, thanks, Thuy. Let me share my screen. Mode. Now, can everyone see this?
Yep, it's up now,
Yeah.
Lisa, thanks.
Great. Okay, well, look, thank you very much, Thuy. Really great to be here today with you all, and also great to be here with my colleagues from some of the other agencies. I hope this gives you a very good perspective of how important the Irish food and agriculture industry is, and how much we collaborate with each other to really give our customers the full holistic experience of what Ireland can support with. So to give a little bit of an overview on Bord Bia is the government agency responsible for Irish food and beverage exports. So we're really tasked with promoting and driving sustainable success of Irish food and drinks, both domestically in Ireland and internationally. Our role, particularly in markets like Southeast Asia, includes the promotion of food and drinks, driving sustainability and our sustainability standards, and connecting Irish suppliers with buyers across the regions. Our purpose is really to bring Ireland's outstanding food, drink, and horticulture to the world. It's a really important sector and part of the Irish economy, and we see it as a great opportunity to not only promote this domestically in Ireland, but to bring these products internationally to our customers. Our focus is on supporting and enabling the Irish suppliers so that they can be at their best in the world, and also connecting these with customers like yourselves across Southeast Asia. Just some insights and high-level overview on Bord Bia. We have 164 staff. Our headquarters is in Dublin, but we have 14 overseas offices across Asia, Europe, North America. We currently supply to 187 export markets. And I think it was Jonathan had a figure earlier of 15.2 billion exports in 2023. Our most recent stat for 2024 was actually 17 billion worth of exports. So a very important sector for the Irish government. At 90% of what Ireland produces is exported internationally. So again, just really shows how important this sector is. And we work with over 1,400 Irish companies in food and drink. In terms of the areas and the sectors that we manage, there's a couple of them a few of them listed on the left-hand side of the screen here. We would look after exports of dairy, seafood, beef, lamb, poultry, pork, alcohol, and prepared consumer foods. So this would be chocolates, snacks, crisps. And in terms of our stakeholders, they really are the farmers in Ireland, the government. We would work a lot with the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine and the other agencies on the call, the food industry, including the food processors, and of course, our customers and our consumers internationally. Excuse me. So again, Jonathan spoke a lot around sustainability and how embedded and important that is to Enterprise Ireland. And Bord Bia would say the exact same sentiments. Sustainability is embedded in everything we do from an Irish agriculture perspective. We have the Origin Green programme, which is Ireland's national food and drink sustainability programme, operating at a national level. This is the world's only national food and drink sustainability programme. And really, it enables the industry to continuously improve, to set and achieve measurable targets. And we do this by getting third-party validation and accreditation, and really targets that respect the environment and respect the local communities and support with what our international customers need. The programme works across a variety of groups. We represent over 77,000 farmers, over 300 Irish leading food manufacturers and processors. We work in the retail and the food service space with the big retailers and food service companies. And obviously the government is at the heart of a lot of this. And in terms of what this programme encompasses, it encompasses so much. We highlight here on the right-hand side of the screen some of the areas that the different groups would target, whether it be farm health and safety, carbon footprinting, grassland management. But really, we're very open to having conversations with yourselves as customers and understanding what's important with you from a sustainability perspective. And we can then collaborate with you in terms of how Ireland and how our Irish clients can support you on this sustainability journey. So great to be here again. Thank you very much to Twi and the Enterprise Ireland team for pulling this together, and look forward to any of your questions or comments in this session or post the session.
Thanks very much, Lisa. And up next now, we will hear from Mrs. Karina Pierce. Karina is the Professor of Dairy Production, Director of External Relations, and Program Director for the Dairy Business Program in the School of Agriculture and Food Science, University College Dublin. Her research focus is on the sustainability of dairy production systems. Karina is a board member of Board BIA, the Irish Food Board that you just heard from, and AgriAware, an Irish agri-food educational body. Karina, the floor is yours now.
Can I just check that you can see my slides and that you can hear me okay?
You're good to go, Karina.
Thank you very much, Twee, and good afternoon, everybody. It is my pleasure to be here to speak to you briefly today and to join the panel discussion with my colleagues from across other institutions and organisations in Ireland. I'm delighted to get to see Robert again following his visit to Ireland last September as well. So I am a staff member in University College Dublin. I'm Professor of Dairy Production, as Twee said a moment ago. And so just very briefly on UCD, we are a university on the east coast of Ireland, so in the capital in Dublin, and it's a very large university. The numbers I show might even underestimate the number of students we have. Very large campus, and we also have many thousands of students across the world, in Malaysia, in China, and many other parts too. We run, obviously, our business is in education, but also it's a very research intensive university. And I suppose as Paul and Jonathan and others have mentioned, the agri-food sector is a very integrated system in Ireland, and we have a place in that too, in terms of the education of the next generation of leaders, and also in the research that we conduct. So agriculture and food is one part, or one key part, of our university. So I wanted to highlight, as part of the university, I spend a lot of my time working at UCD and researching at UCD Lyons Farm. So the university owns its own farm. It's the only university in Ireland that has its own farm of around 250 hectares. So that is substantially larger than the average farm in Ireland. But it is extremely important for us, for the education of our undergraduates. So obviously the next generation, the leaders that have, they have gotten a very good educational experience, but also hands-on experience. The farm is extremely important for us for that. We have multiple enterprises on the farm. So we have dairy, beef, sheep, goats, horses, pigs, chickens, crops, and I suppose we focus a lot on the environment there as well. So not many farms in Ireland would have multiple enterprises, as you see like this, but because we need our students in agricultural science and also veterinary medicine to have experience with many different types of animals and many different types of crops, the farm as a result is quite diverse in the enterprises that it has. So I suppose the farm acts as a platform for us for education, for research, and also then for dissemination of that research. So you'll see in some of the pictures on the right, obviously grass is extremely important to us in Ireland for ruminant production. But we have many, many groups that come to the farm: industry groups, government groups, farmer groups, student groups. And so we can effectively disseminate information and learnings in that environment, which I think is very important. We have a particular focus on this concept of One Health. And down in the bottom right, you'll see a lot of little faces and a lot of little boxes, which is hard to see. But basically that is just highlighting that there are a lot of researchers involved across a very broad range of areas. So from animal production, which is the area that I am involved in myself, dairy production, right through to genetics, to economics, to how we grow those crops, how we feed our animals, so how we grow our crops, how we grow our forages, looking at food quality, so how we feed our animals, the impact that that has on food quality, right through then to a very significant focus on the environment. And I suppose that, you know, sustainability is something that has been mentioned quite a number of times on the call so far. So we have an excellent or a world-leading agri-food sector in Ireland, but it is not without its challenges, like every other agricultural sector across the world. And when we talk about those challenges, you could speak to them in light of environmental challenges. So that might be in relation to greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture, water quality, biodiversity. We could look at them in terms of economic challenges, in terms of the cost of the inputs going in to produce our agricultural products and the profitability returned, particularly at farm level. And then also there are many social challenges associated with agriculture as well, in terms of the labour requirements on farms, farm succession, so who are going to be the next generation of farmers. And I suppose in some ways our research at the farm tackles many or all of these areas in one way or another. And importantly, I suppose something that the farm allows us to do, and my own particular interest, is in working closely with industry to find these solutions. So as a university, we can't do this on our own, or as Board BIA or Enterprise Ireland, you know, so we work well together to try and find solutions. And there are lots of challenges to find solutions too. So just a few pictures, I suppose, on this slide, really just to highlight some of the initiatives that we are working with industry on. So in the last 10 years, we have built a new dairy facility at the farm. And that's working with one of our Irish manufacturers, Dairy Master, and many other companies as well, animal genetic companies, animal nutrition companies, our milk processors, to look at more sustainable ways of producing dairy. So we as a university are invested in, and we want to conduct research, but the most effective way for us to do that is in partnership with industry. On the right-hand side of the slide, as you look at it, this week we launched a new dairy calf education and research facility, which you can see in the middle picture on the right. And again, that's working with Irish companies, working with Ornua, who market Kerrygold butter around the world, working with JFC, which is an Irish company manufacturing automatic calf feeders, working with animal health company like MSD. So again, that cooperation and collaboration with industry allows us to build and develop world-class facilities, but it also solves and helps industry solve some of their problems as well. And so it helps us to work better together. Just in general on the farm, we use a lot of technologies, not just Irish technologies, but best available technologies from around the world to help us be more sustainable in terms of how we grow our crops, how we identify our animals, how we gather data on our animals, like in the top left, in terms of their milk yields, their milking time, you know, their feed consumption, and so on, and that we can better use that information to be more efficient on the farm. And then we can help our farmers as well. Using that information, we can help our farmers become more efficient and hopefully more profitable as well. So I look forward to the conversation, and that's me for now. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Karina. I'm sure we'll have a few questions for you after this. Last but not least, I'd like to invite Mr. David Butler. David specializes in publicly funded developmental services and projects in the fields of agri-food systems and enterprise development. He currently leads Sustainable Food Systems Ireland, a government-owned consultancy and knowledge exchange organization that delivers capability building projects around the world to strengthen sustainable food systems. David.
Thank you, Twee. Good evening, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. It's lovely to be with you. Just checking you can hear and see my slides.
You're good to go.
Thank you. Very briefly, I'm going to just describe what SFSI does. We are established by Government of Ireland to take all of the processes, the technologies, the expertise of those organizations you've just been hearing from and from others, translate that to applications which work with our partner governments globally around the world to strengthen their food systems on the basis that stronger and more sustainable food systems globally are better for all of us. So working with our counterparts on a government to government basis to support their plans on strengthening food systems and the elements of food systems. I'll just in these 5 minutes talk about three things. One is a piece of evidence about Ireland's, I suppose, Ireland's success, that what Robert talked about, that balancing act, but what's the evidence that that's been successful, and what are the public policy implications of that, or the public policy investments that have been made in order to achieve that outcome. Secondly, talk about our strategic approach as a government. And thirdly, talk a little bit about SFSI, and one example being our work in Vietnam, currently underway. So just on mentioning evidence, Ireland ranks globally in these kind of indices. This is from the EIU Global Food Security Index as number 2 globally in food security. And in all of the indexes that this organization has produced in recent years, Ireland has been either number 1, number 2, or number 3 in food security across all the criteria of food security. Digging into those figures, though, the performance of key areas is really important in supporting and producing that performance in food security. And two of the really important areas I want to point to here are food safety and agricultural R&D and innovation. These are areas of that require public investment. They're areas of policy. They're areas where there needs to be a close interaction between the triple helix, as Jonathan and colleagues said, the government, the researchers, research performers, and the private sector. But they cost. They require continuous investment. They require institutional, legislative, and regulatory systems that work well together with both public and private sector. So in food safety, for instance, Ireland scores particularly well across the range of elements of that indicator, requiring us to have legislation and mechanisms in place for food safety. For agricultural R&D and innovation, this is about public expenditure on research and development, so helping to support some of the things Karina was talking about, access to agri-technology, education and resources, and commitment to innovative technologies. If we take all high-income countries, Ireland scores significantly higher than the mean of high-income countries. The score there, Ireland hitting a score in that index of 82 versus a mean average for high-income countries of 60. So 33% better than the mean average. This is success, but it takes investment, it takes time, it takes money. Secondly, I want to talk about our strategic approach. Ireland, back in 2021, was one of the first countries in the world to create its sectoral strategy called Food Vision 2030, and to create it as a based on a food systems approach. So this systems term means that we see agri-food in its totality. We see all of the actors, all the institutions, and all of the impacts in a joined up way. So helping us and requiring us to think about sustainability across all pillars of sustainability, not just economic, but also environmental and social. This is a challenging approach. It requires us bringing all stakeholders together and as I said, looking at all the pillars, all the elements, all the actors where possible, and the impacts, looking at our impacts in a different way. But the elements of that strategy, Food Vision 2030, you'll see there is made up of missions, activities, missions, goals, and activities. And they cover not just primary production, not just agricultural and food production, but also the viability and resilience of primary producers, fishers and farmers, the safety, nutritious and dietary impacts of the food that we produce, the trust, the markets, the routes to market, and fourthly, the competitiveness and resilience of the sector in terms of innovation, in terms of technology, talent, and skills available to it. This is a systems approach where these missions, these goals and activities reinforce each other. They're all interconnected, they all interact together, and that's a systems approach. In terms of Sustainable Food Systems Ireland, I mentioned briefly that we take Irish expertise and work with our counterparts globally. So trying to, the vision being that Ireland can support a just transition towards sustainable food systems, and that providing these opportunities, providing these access to these skills is beneficial to all of us. It's beneficial in two ways. We're demand driven, so we work with our clients based on our government clients based on what their priorities are, but they tend to cohere around these areas to the right of that screen, the practice areas around sustainable food systems, the elements of sustainable food systems. So One Health, agri-food entrepreneurship and enterprise development, innovation and research systems, extension and knowledge transfer systems, and policy and governance. So we carry out this work, this capability building work with our partners through funded projects globally. SFSI is comprised of 5 of our key and largest government agencies, including our ministry here, the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and 3 of the 3 agencies that you've already heard from, our colleagues Teagasc, Board Bia and Enterprise Ireland, and the 4th is the Food Safety Authority of Ireland. So crossing 3 ministries, bringing together key public skills, experience, legacies, and so on around developing and regulating food and agriculture. SFSI works around the world, but predominantly in the European neighborhood, in Sub-Saharan Africa, Middle East, and in Asia Pacific. Our largest project is in Vietnam. Let me finish by just giving you a small reference about our Ireland-Vietnam Agri-Food Partnership. This is just moved into its 2nd year of a 5-year program. So aims to transform support the transformation of Vietnamese food system, including strengthening climate resilient primary production, food safety, food systems transformation, and enterprise and cooperative development. So this is supported through technical assistance, consultancy, knowledge sharing, support for collaborative research between Irish and Vietnamese institutions and organizations, training and skills development. We cross through the work packages, we cross the food system, broadly speaking. So looking at sustainable primary production, looking at food safety and food systems transformation, and looking at the whole sphere of innovation and quality. So working on areas, as I said, like enterprise and cooperative development. Just using this example, as Robert said, Vietnam is very successful in areas like rice, coffee, cashews, peppers. Ireland doesn't produce any of that. I'm going to say that doesn't matter, because the principles behind success in these areas around innovation, quality, sustainability, food systems transformation, they're the same, whether your dominant sectors are dairy and beef, as Ireland is, or rice and coffee, as Vietnam is. Let me finish there. Look forward to any questions. That's it, over from me. Thank you.
Excellent, David. Thank you very much. I got awfully excited there when you start talking about a systems approach with a circular economy background, but we're not going to go into systems dynamics because everybody will get bored. On Tuesday, when we had this meeting, we were talking about that transferability, and you just mentioned about it doesn't matter what crops because the processes are the same. But rather than going into that, one of the earlier comments was, we work very well together, and obviously as Sustainable Food Ireland, you highlighted that working well together, and perhaps back to all of the presenters. Obviously, that didn't occur overnight, and I suspect at some point in the past that you didn't play so well together. But that level of integration, I think, is critical. So perhaps, from each of you, sort of some comment or some example of perhaps where it hadn't worked so well in the past, and something you did to sort of start working together and get that circular, get that complete loop of support for the Irish food systems.
Can I start with that, James?
You can certainly start, and I suspect everybody else will be very relieved if you start.
Cool. Just as I'm warmed up, so let me start with it. The example of let's call it coordination, and let's just take the public sector bit of that, which is challenging enough. So ministries, even coordinating internally or coordinating horizontally with other ministries is a challenge. It's not straightforward. But this structure that we have built around that food vision strategy and the implementation of that food vision strategy is a really important part of trying to address those challenges. And so the mechanism is in order to create the strategy in the first place, what we do is facilitate it. It's the sector, so bringing the sector together and multiple stakeholders in the sector, chaired by an independent chair. So including the industry, including processors, including farmers, farmer representatives, including the researchers, government agencies, the policymakers themselves. So bringing them together it took actually a year and a half or close to 2 years because of the delays due to COVID, but through a period of strategy formulation to create that vision, to create that shared vision. So that's the first thing. But perhaps more importantly is implementation. So there's a structure around implementation whereby quarterly, all of the chief executives of the key agencies, the ministries, other ministries, and private sector are brought into meetings chaired by our minister, they're mandatory. The minister is always there each quarter, hearing progress against targets and hearing about implementation issues, talking to the stakeholders, talking to the private sector, trying to deal with new issues as they come in. But that's the implementation on a continuous basis over the lifetime of the strategy. So really, really important to have those formal structures where you bring in the public sector. All of the organizations here come to that under the minister. They're all reporting back on their activities and their actions, and it's the opportunity to bring in the private sector. There are multiple versions of that. That's at an apex level. Then there's subsidiary committees and so on. But that's kind of the formal structure. There's lots of informal coordination that works well and doesn't work well, but having that formal structure over a lifetime of the strategy, I think, is really key for as far as we're concerned. Over.
I think James, just to add to David's point, I think it is one of the advantages of us being a smaller country as well. So we are, as David mentioned, from government ministers through to each one of us, there's obviously a closeness there, and there's lines of communication open to it. But you know what? Like on a personal level, there's nothing quite like opportunities or challenges or issues that we have to face that bind us all together. So whether it's around looking at our consumers and our customers, as Lisa said, and looking at the whole area around sustainability, or looking, as David said, around food safety, these are big challenges for us in the food sector. So those challenges mean that we have to work together, and it drives us together.
I might come in there, James.
Yeah, go on, Karina. Go.
Yeah, so I suppose if you look at it at a very basic level, some of the research funding supported by government money or taxpayers' money actually is dependent on collaboration. So there are many of us, we'd say, are collaborative, but if researchers have money and they can, we say, stay in their own lanes, they will often do that. But a lot of the funding that comes about now means that it's dependent on my collaboration with Teagasc, or, for impact, industry involvement and support is really important as well. So I suppose that in some ways in the past has forced collaboration. but has meant then that it builds networks, it builds interaction, and then in the future, then you're just, it becomes second nature to you to just reach out to those people and others then for some of these big challenges that we talk about. So I think there's a little bit of what we would call carrot and stick, in that there is, you know, some criteria there that as researchers we need to adhere to. And then over time, that collaboration becomes a very natural thing to do.
Excellent, excellent.
I'll
Unless
just
Paul,
add to that
yeah, go on, Paul.
a small observation supporting what Karina said. I think the funding creates the conditions under which cooperation can flourish, but ultimately with professionals in the sector, once they get to know each other, get to work together, they have that common challenge or that interest, and suddenly they do acknowledge that in the majority cases that it's better to cooperate. So there's healthy co-opetition, I suppose, in a small country like Ireland. We compete sometimes for the same funding, but we generally can find a way of working together if that's possible.
Excellent. Lisa, unless you have anything to throw in, we perhaps take a question from Takeshi. Do you want to start, and then we go to Sinai?
Thank you very much. It was nice meeting some of you. I mean, I was part of this mission last October, I guess. And I mean, the idea of holding this session actually was from my heart. And I was really impressed this, you know, thriving Irish agri-food industry. I mean, what's behind? And I noticed the great ecosystem established by, you know, government and bringing in the private sector. That's there. And I just wanted to really share with my colleagues and other government officials that, I mean, how private sector can play a catalytic roles to, you know, let them grow and, you know, sustain farmers' livelihood. You are really looking at the industry and also farmers' livelihood. Somehow, I mean, as David said, it's so difficult to get different ministries sit together. And it's even more difficult to sit, you know, beyond, you know, going to other stakeholders, private companies and farmers. It's not very easy. But I mean, you have done that. As a result, you came up with this beautiful Vision 2030 or 2035 that's based on the agri-food system, which is really, you know, forward-thinking, forward-looking vision. So I have two questions, relevant questions. First is, I mean, this vision preparation, you said it took a year and a half, and we have to gather and you engage experts. I can see lots of money involved. And, you know, Asia is the kind of region which has relatively high expenditure, public expenditure in agriculture, like say 5%. But I mean, this is not only R&D, but overall agriculture 5%. How to secure, I don't know how many percentage of public funding coming to agri-food, but how you are able to secure such kind of large chunk of fund to this sector. I mean, that's my first question. Second question is you work a lot on livestock. Now, livestock in, I mean, nutrition security is important, but at the same time, GHG emission, that's something, you know, I mean, we have to be careful about. So how do you deal with this, you know, livestock centered agri-food system development? How do you deal with this GHG emission challenge? So I stop here. Thank you.
The question is open for the floor. If anyone wants to take it first.
I'll have a go at the first part for sure. Just on securing funding. So I suppose, I mean, Agri-food as a total is something like 7% of our gross national income, a modified gross national income. Ireland has very high GDP due to high tech, and so agriculture itself, the totality of agriculture of total GDP is less than 1%, but for a modified gross national income relevant to the domestic sector, it's about 7%, about 8% of employment. But very importantly, rural employment is really important, and the multiplier from agri-food exports is higher than for any sector. So $1 or euro worth of food exports is more valuable to us than any other export. And that's largely because of the domestic market impacts, the inputs, the fact that profits stay at home, and so on. Therefore, economically, it's important. Culturally, I think is very important. Our political system is pretty open in the sense that Irish politicians and ministers are very accessible to their voters. They're all constituents. They're all voted at constituency level. They're all electoral animals, as it were. They therefore are close to their voters, and I mean, people will always argue about it, but I would say that the importance of agri-food in the ethos and in the political consciousness is very high here, and as a result, there's a continuous battle for access to budget every year. Yes, absolutely, same as everywhere else. Agri-food, the treatment of agri-food is continuously and pretty consistent. Secondly, we have to acknowledge European agriculture is a bit different to most other parts of the world. So it's subsidized through we have the common agricultural policy system. So at an EU level, and that's originally a food security set of objectives, but it's now evolved, I guess, into more an environmental and greening a set of incentives. But that's really, really important in terms of the EU budget, and therefore at the member states budget for those member states for whom agriculture is really important. So that does act as a protector. It gives us a lot of our food law and a lot of our objectives in terms of EU Green Deal and farm to fork strategies and so on. So it drives a lot of our regulatory and legislative systems approaches as well. But that combination means agriculture and food is still really, really important. And as I say, things like the regional employment, the multiplier, and so on, really, really important. Climate-wise, greenhouse gas emissions, we have pretty strong targets. And while progress is difficult, it is positive. I'll maybe hand over to one of my colleagues on the innovation side on this, but we believe in the role of sustainable livestock in diets, in nutrition, and in effective circular systems. I think that there's a very strong ethos here about the role of livestock, and of course you have to balance that in terms of emissions and pollution and so on. Let me finish there. Maybe the others will want to come in.
All right, please. Yeah.
Coming there. So thank you for your questions. I'll tackle the second part maybe a little bit as well, and Paul and others might come in there too. So we have a very long history in the production of dairy and beef in Ireland, and so it's very difficult to move away from that, even if we wanted to, because we grow grass. You see from all the pictures, and what's behind Paul and his background shows that is very much in our DNA, and we do that very well. But in saying that, we also have legally binding targets to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. So there is certainly a very significant challenge. And there's nothing like a challenge to bring the whole of sector together. And that brings many of us on the call here together in different fora. So we are looking at many angles to improve the sustainability of the production of dairy and meat. So for example, the genetics that we use, how we can produce grass more efficiently with less fertilizer, looking at methane reducing feed additives, a huge amount of research going on to help farmers to I suppose, have confidence in technologies, and an advisory sector that Paul can speak to that works on the ground with farmers. So we produce world-class product at a low carbon footprint, but we do have very significant challenges. But from industry to all the players around the table, all the actors around the table here at the universities, we are all trying, I suppose, our best to work together to find solutions. And there are very positive signs in place. But I would say that there is not any sector, be that energy, transport, agriculture, that is on target currently to meet those significant reductions, for example, by 2030. But we're on a road and we're getting there. And the main thing is that we can ensure that our farmers remain, there's profitability in farming as we bring in many of these measures, because at the end of this, we still need farmers to produce those food. So it isn't just about research. It isn't just about finding the right technologies. There's many different people and actors that we need to bring along with us as we do this.
I just support everything you said, Karina. I was going to make the point that if you look behind me, not all of this land is easily converted from animal production to crop production. You know, that's a typical landscape in Ireland. And the point about competitiveness is very important. We have to make sure that farmers still can make a living. And if there is some change on diversification of land use, that's fine. And there's no problem with that as such. Only it's not something that has happened in the last number of years in any substantial way. And I think one of the other things we're trying to manage is that as we try to tackle the greenhouse gas challenge, we also try to tackle water quality and biodiversity as well. So where possible, the actions we take are beneficial, not just to one aspect of sustainability from the environmental pillar, but also the others. But we're incredibly conscious of the social challenges, economic challenges, as well as environmental challenges. But almost all of our work program in the last 7 years has pivoted towards supporting sustainability. And some of the initiatives that we have worked hard on, even providing information to farmers through the cooperation with Board Via and ICBF on a platform called AgNav is a very tangible thing that we've been working on, again, collaboratively, to try and make sure that people can see what their footprint is and then what measures can they take to adjust that. So we've put a huge amount of work in. We have shifted a bit, as Karina said, and we know that it gets tougher. The further you go on this journey, the harder it is to make the breakthroughs. But that's the journey we're on at the moment.
Excellent. Paul, can we just quickly take Sanai's question? We have literally 3 minutes left, Sanai, so if you quickly ask your question and perhaps some quick responses, and then we'll be able to close out our webinar. Go on, Sanai.
Yeah, sure. Actually, David and Karina kind of covered some part of my question, but given the chance, I'll just mention anyway. By the way, Ireland, I've been meaning to visit, but I was looking for the dry season that no more sunshine, and I never get to yet. But I think through this session, I'm more inspired to just determine and go. I'm mostly working in South Asia as agriculture specialist in ADB, and particularly in India. So for your information, the kind of work that we are trying to do now is soil health management and particularly the monitoring. Like the countries that we cover, they are like a 3-year based one report given to farmers. And we are trying to really raise their awareness that more model-based and then real-time kind of monitoring can be also introduced. So that kind of work we do. Organic agriculture, we are now trying to support in many parts of this India, Nepal. Wholesale market in the PPP model, and not only just the wholesale market, but the short value chains with the B2B or B2C kind of models. We also try to introduce digital agriculture, as you mentioned, the sensor-based and more platform-based advisories to farmers, inland fisheries, and the plant health. We are also bringing innovative models to these countries. But as like, for example, as we work on the organic certification, and we studied these European models a lot, and then as David mentioned, that I realized by interviewing these European farmers that their motivation and actually the desire or the driver for continuing this organic practice was actually supported a lot by the Common Agricultural Policy and the subsidy part. So as we now working with the developing countries where farmers have less than 1 hectare, and then a lot of number of farmers as we work through, and we have to make sure that everybody does this organic certifications and etc. So I really was thinking about how we can really transform this public sector based support towards more private sector collaboration. If I think about the extension areas that in the Netherlands, we have seen that all the research or extension services are more privatized. And I have seen in the US that almost 50% is still government financed. The federal services are supporting it. So maybe my question is more like Ireland, how you will position yourself, like if you characterize what kind of support is done by the private sector mostly, and how your journey of changing more privatization and maybe challenges and how you overcome that. Thank you.
Does anybody want to have a take on that? David, yeah?
Sune, thank you. Thanks for that. There's more than 3 minutes in an answer to that, I'm afraid. And there's a lot of, you've a lot packed in there. Maybe Paul would talk about this as well, but like I guess we still have a national extension service. Accidental or not, it serves a very strong purpose for us now. The integration of extension and education and research, the amount of money we actually spend per head on supporting innovation and R&D, some of which fails because that's the nature of R&D. It's supposed to be, you're supposed to not know the outcome. And that implies a commitment of a public commitment towards these activities, even where we have single farm payments and so on, and the common agricultural policy. These are additional choices. The thing with a lot of the countries that we work in, that we see, is that there are budgets still being spent, and sometimes those incentives are perhaps mismatched with the objectives. Sometimes there's policy incoherence. You have an awful lot of support for certain commodities in many markets, which can lead to a lack of both agricultural diversity and a lack of dietary diversity. And we're gradually seeing, I suppose, a view by countries that they need to introduce more choice in those kind of systems, and alternative funding models. But the access to funding is really, really difficult. So we have to think about blended financing and mechanisms in order to incentivize uptake of practices like organics, or like better soil management, or reduced use of pesticides, or whatever it is, or fertilizers, in more appropriate systems. But you've got to give the system support so that the right decisions are being made. So again, it needs to be systemically approached how you do it. So the reason for, if organic is the choice, the reason for it needs to be sound, and it needs to be essentially market driven. What we try to do in some cases is think about, is there a premium that can be attached? Not bring control. I mentioned food safety, and One Health was mentioned earlier. We don't want to be bringing controls. We want to try to bring controls, or an approach to enforcement that's based on incentives as much as based on controls and penalties, because that just won't work where you don't have a strong enforcement system. So trying to incentivize through the greater joining up of the primary side with the value chains, with the offtake, in a more sensible way, in order that farmers are incentivized to be more sustainable. Because in many cases in the countries we work in, it makes perfect sense to introduce more circular systems, to make better use of water, to make renewable energy, and so on. So there are solutions to be found. It's just they are slightly more complex when you don't have a backstop of a large I suppose, common agricultural policy like we have.
Yeah, again, just to add to that, David, I think some general observations, like we have seen the development in Ireland of, in our case, a mixed model or mixed funding model. We've seen versions of where the sector has been supported by fully public funded and some areas fully private funded, and it'd be my contention that the mixed model is better. It brings a bit of tension and a bit of innovation by, I suppose, combining the best efforts of both sides.
Right, I think we're going to have to close ourselves there because we are running 5 minutes over. So I'd like to say thank you very much to all of our presenters, all of our representatives from the Irish government. Fabulous presentations, fabulous discussion. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Tweet, my co-moderator, and a very quick introduction to our Senior Sector Director, Qingfeng Zhang, who leads our agricultural team at ADB, to give us some closing remarks and set us up for the next stages of this engagement and collaboration. Over to you, Qingfeng.
Yeah, thank you so much, James. Thank you to all the panelists today. Again, last 2 days, we learned a lot. We can see how the agrotech innovations can transform the food system, create a job, support the sustainable growth. Again, you know, the agricultural food system is so critical. David mentioned about the importance of agricultural food system in Ireland, but you can see probably much more important in Asia Pacific. Agriculture remained quite vital to Asia and the Pacific. Now, accounting for the significant share of the GDP across the region. For example, 30% in Indonesia, close 9% in the Philippines, 40% in the Vietnam. Investing in the agricultural, not only just boosting food productions, but also important to create job and also the help the rural communities. As we discussed yesterday, in Asia Pacific, close to 40% of the population rely on the agricultural food system for the workforce. Now, the very critical time for the Asia Pacific right now to transform the agri-food system. Many of the countries have the national strategy to transform the food system. This is very critical for those economies to move from the middle low-income country to upper middle-income countries. In this process, expanding use of the modern technology becomes very critical to make the food system more productive, efficient, and also more resilient. Again, this today's workshop quite critical and also the timely. Two things from my side. One is I learned so much from the David's presentation about the Ireland's food system approach, a food system vision. Again, two things quite critical. One is, of course, government leadership, very critical to drive these agrotech innovations and also transform the food systems. Very critical introduce a holistic approach, policies, partnerships, investments, which can accelerate progress. Second is, in addition to the importance of the agricultural value chain and also the job creation, it's also important to integrate the agricultural value chain into the natural ecosystem restorations. This is particularly important for Asia Pacific. So in Asia Pacific, the agricultural food system suffering not only just by the climate change, but also by the ecosystem degradations. So for future, restoring natural ecosystem, protect the biodiversity, harmonize the agri-food system with nature, very critical. So today's presentations emphasize the importance of nature-based solutions. So nature-based solution going to be the core, the heart of the future of food system. ADB, through the Agricultural Food Nature Rural Development 6th Office, we really work together with our developing member countries. Of course, probably our colleague from the area, and you also know that we are ready to build up the ADB's new ambition for food system transformation. And the lessons, experiences we learned from the last 2 days are quite critical and also timely. We're going to build on what we learn and also explore the sort of the possible opportunity to integrate those agrotech innovations into our future projects and also the programs. So last 2 days, we can see, the momentum, the passion, engagement, both from our developing member countries and also from the ADB colleague. You can see the very strong participations, even though it's late afternoon. I believe that with this passion and also interest, there is a great potential to build the deeper partnership that can collect the Irish technologies and also the needs of the Asian markets. So taking this opportunity, of course, I want to thank James, Takeshi, the entire emerging area team of FL sector office, and also Calvin and also Train from the Irish enterprise. Their professionalism and also dedication and also efforts make these 2 days webinar as a great success. So thank you again. Thank you all for the energy, insights, commitment. I learn a lot and also inspired by your passion and also your knowledge. I look forward to working with you guys in the long journey. Again, this is only the start. We look for the long-term cooperation and also the partnership. Thank you. Good evening. So over back to you, James.
Thank you, Ching Thang. Thank you for those closing remarks. So just quickly, the questions that were in the chat that we didn't get to, we will answer via email if that's okay. So at this point, I'd like to say thank you very much to everybody for organizing this, attending this, contributing to this. And we look forward to the next steps. We look forward to further engagement with Enterprise Ireland, with the companies, with the government bodies. So thank you very much for making it a successful event. And I wish you all a good morning and a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.